Modern geopolitical borders, the United Nations, and the persistent tension of the nuclear age were all forged in a single 6-year window. In 1918, the previous war ended not with a resolution, but with a settlement. The victorious nations designed a peace intended to punish Germany and prevent another conflict. Instead, the demand for massive financial reparations created an economic vacuum. Germany collapsed into hyperinflation, a crisis so severe that money became worthless and the savings of an entire generation vanished overnight. When the basic mechanics of survival fail, societies turn toward those who promise absolute certainty. This economic displacement left Germany vulnerable to political extremists who offered a return to national strength through military aggression. Throughout the 1930s, the international community chose to look away as Adolf Hitler dismantled the German state and weaponized racist conspiracy theories to identify internal enemies. He began rebuilding a military machine in open defiance of international law. Hitler repeatedly crossed international borders to annex territory, the Rhineland, Austria, the Sudetenland. Each time his opponents declined to intervene, teaching him that his expansion would meet no physical resistance. On September 1, 1939, the illusion that these retreats would buy security shattered. Germany launched a full-scale invasion of Poland. This invasion introduced a system called Blitzkrieg. By integrating armored units with rapid radio communication and air support, the German military could paralyze an enemy's command structure before they could even organize a response. Every diplomatic concession in the years leading up to the war provided the German regime with something more valuable than land: time. It used those years to engineer an industrialized machine specifically designed for continental conquest. After securing much of Western Europe, Hitler made a fatal strategic pivot. He broke his non-aggression pact with the Soviet Union and launched Operation Barbarossa, seeking to capture the vast resources of the East. This map shows the scale of the operation. Millions of soldiers advanced across a frontier so vast that supply lines became overstretched and fragile. The German High Command had planned for a quick collapse, but the advance stalled. Winter arrived, temperatures dropped below zero, and the German military found itself trapped in a war of endurance against an opponent with nearly inexhaustible human reserves. In the Pacific, Imperial Japan made its own decisive move to secure regional dominance. A surprise attack on the American naval base at Pearl Harbor drew the United States into a struggle that was now truly global. These two simultaneous choices to expand the conflict transformed separate regional wars into a singular, inescapable nightmare that touched every continent. To understand the conflict, we must look past the battlefield tactics to the ideological core of the Nazi state, the Holocaust. The German state weaponized its bureaucracy, its transportation networks, and its industrial machinery for the purpose of systematic mass murder. Millions of Jewish people, along with Roma, prisoners of war, and other targeted groups, were murdered in a process that operated with factory-like efficiency. The Holocaust reveals the war's ultimate stakes. Victory required more than capturing land. It required the total dismantling of a state that had transformed the tools of modern industry into an engine of genocide. Reversing the Axis advance required an even larger industrial mobilization. The United States became the arsenal of democracy, converting civilian assembly lines into a production machine that could outbuild the enemy. But industrial volume alone was not a guarantee of victory. The turning tide depended on individual endurance at strategic choke points, the ruins of Stalingrad, the islands of the Pacific, and the logistical miracle of D-Day. In June 1944, the Allied landings at Normandy opened a path into Western Europe. This operation required thousands of ships and hundreds of thousands of soldiers to overcome a heavily fortified coastline. Defeating the Axis powers demanded a combination of overwhelming manufacturing scale and a staggering human cost that redefined the nature of total war. By May 1945, the Nazi regime was gone. Soviet and Allied forces met in the ruins of Berlin, ending the conflict in Europe. But the war in the Pacific continued. Facing casualty projections in the millions for an invasion of Japan, American leaders chose to use a technology that changed the definition of warfare. The atomic bombings of Hiroshima and Nagasaki ended the war, but they also introduced a world where one weapon could destroy an entire city in a single moment. Humanity had successfully ended the conflict, but in doing so, it created a future where total annihilation is now a permanent strategic possibility. The immediate aftermath saw the world divided between two rival superpowers. To prevent another total collapse, delegates from dozens of nations formed the United Nations as a forum for collective security. At Nuremberg, the world established that government officials are legally accountable for crimes against humanity, ensuring following orders was no longer a valid defense. These battlefields are quiet now. The grass has grown over the trenches, and the cities have been rebuilt. Yet the institutions built in 1945 still struggle to manage the same forces that broke the world in 1939. The 6-year collapse into total war remains a permanent measure of what it costs when a global society waits for a threat to become a catastrophe before choosing to act.